One of the few trends that we see overall that drive our business, and the first one here is evident. The cloud is the future of IT. We're seeing it. We run the largest B2B integration cloud in the world. And we've run this same cloud for years. It's just now becoming called a cloud. And all indications from Gartner and from the industry analysts and from the trends that we see, companies are accepting and utilizing cloud computing on a regular basis. The network organization is becoming much more dynamic. People aren't sitting at their desks; they're working out with their mobile devices and doing their business the way that they would normally do it, but in various ways. So that technology is also coming very, very quickly. ERP complexity in the hunt for ROI. I think in the world today, companies have ERPs, and the minute they try to step outside the organization and deal with other companies, that complexity multiplies. And you'll see that is a problem that will continue, especially as IT departments move towards the cloud. This becomes harder to do unless you have companies that specialize in the interaction between companies. And this is a statement that's been made by Gartner. It's been made by several different analysts. But future productivity gains in the enterprise really actually lie outside of the enterprise. It lies with companies that do business with your company and the way you interact with those companies. That's where the productivities gains going to happen. And that's when we talk about social networking. You know, we all know social networking and the Facebook and Twitter and the things that we see every day. But we have a different slant on it when it comes to supply chain. Those tools are absolutely powerful and useful, and the paradigms and the models that those tools represent provide value. But we need to do it in a very structured way to support the supply chain and provide very much productivity out of the supply chain. When I say supply chain, what I'm really talking about is, you know, typically we think of the flow from the suppliers, manufacturers, or raw materials into a company that's going to do something with those either sell them, turn them into other products, distribute them, do something with them, and then the customer. So we traditionally think of supply chain as the product flow of moving materials down that. Well, the supply chain that we talk about, we think about, is really this information and strategic requirements, understanding what's happening with the customers and getting that information back to the company that's selling, and also back to the suppliers, so they understand what's happening downstream with their products. So that there's a closed loop here with the technology, the information, and the actual product, because that line can have many boxes, and it can be many locations around the world, separated by oceans and all kinds of things. So very, very complex. But when we say supply chain, that's what I'm talking about. And when we talk about adding the social networking component, we're really talking about making that process smoother and bringing humans into the equation and making that collaboration work so that gets faster and more efficient. That's through collaboration. It's through creating centers of competency and sharing information across that supply chain, so that if someone knows in one part of the supply chain, understands how to do something, they can share it with the other parties in the supply chain. They can resolve issues. They can respond to crises faster. They can do a lot of things faster than they could do before. So these are things we think of today as typical social constructs. Lots of feedback mechanism, but there's not much structure around this to make sense out of it today, right? There's a lot of ways to communicate, which is great, but without structure, without audit trails, without history, without understanding, it's very, very difficult to use. Response has to be real time. There's lots of data. How do you track it? What do you do with it? How do you store it? Those things are all challenges that come up in dealing with the social aspects of supply chain.
Most companies have spent the last 40 or so years actually focused on IT, putting all the infrastructure that they needed in place, as Steve alluded to help them do business as well as connect their businesses to other businesses. And what that basically left is this tremendous void in the people layer. So we made our systems super efficient. Systems can talk to one another very easily. But at the end of the day, you really need people to help move processes along, especially in a B2B scenario. We like to think of companies of evolution and how far they are along this evolution scale. So Steve talked to you a lot about the transactional layer. So initially, a company will typically have very few of their suppliers, and if they're kind of in the beginning, I think most companies have evolved over here, but if they first start out, they don't have a lot of suppliers enabled electronically. They don't have a lot of their B2B processes automated. But as they've, over the last 40 or so years, especially with the help of the trading grid, they have moved over to here where they're actually exchanging documents electronically with their suppliers. So this is the trading grid network. What the new Rollstream solution helps do is people evolve over through on the people scale. So for most part, most companies haven't evolved here. They may have evolved down here, but they have not evolved here. A lot of companies still do things manually. If they want to interact with other businesses, they're sending emails, they're sending faxes still, or they're just filling out paper forms to actually get new business. What we see over time, and especially with the new GXS Rollstream solution, is that they can do all of that in the cloud through self-service tools. So when we talk about B2B community management, there are 3 primary pieces of that. The first is onboarding. So the ultimate goal is to get them to be transacting electronically. But there's a lot of things that have to happen up front. So let's say I am Tesco, who's one of our premier customers, and tomorrow they decide that there's a new vendor that they want to work with. Well, they will traditionally send out either an email or a paper form that says, please identify yourself, tell me your financial information, tell me who your key contacts are. So they'll pre-qualify them. Once they pre-qualify them, somebody usually in finance or legal has to actually register that new vendor, make sure that they're a viable company that they can do business with. And then when they're done with that, they actually then want to enable them to transact electronically, whether that be submit purchase orders or get paid, either way. So once you've established your community, you know who you're going to do business with, you actually want to gain visibility. So what that means is you want to collect other information about them. It might be around compliance, things that you want to make sure that they're actually doing. And then lastly, performance. So let's say that new vendor that Tesco identified isn't actually shipping the things they said on time. They can actually use some tools that we have in the GXS Rollstream suite to collaborate and communicate using some of those social networking concepts to resolve disputes like shipping disputes.